What's up guys, I'm Sea Warfighter and welcome to part 2 of my squad helicopter guide. In this video I'll be going over advanced flying and landing techniques as well as general helicopter theory to keep you as productive as possible with your team's asset. We'll go over things like J-hook and rooftop landings, evasive maneuvers, and helicopter capabilities, but if you're looking for something in particular, please see the description below. I'll put timestamps down there to help you find what you're looking for that much faster.
Right here,
Trees right below you.
left, front.
Yep, this is good here. Good here.
Yo, pork it right here, dude. But, God, how do you ice the chopper like that? That's impressive.
Alright, first I want to go over flight. To help you guys improve your flying skills a little bit more quickly, I'm going to go over the do's and don'ts of more advanced flying techniques and show you a couple of tricks as well. In general, unless you're flying Recon for your team, you want to fly as low and as fast as possible. This helps you avoid fires from enemy vehicles and infantry emplacements and obscures your activities from infantry on the ground. To improve your flying skills quickly, you need to challenge yourself, and the best place to do that is the training grounds. I recommend that you load up into the training grounds and use the admin change map function to try out flying on various maps. This will give you the opportunity to snake in between trees, over rivers and roads, and in between buildings. To start off, practice flying full speed towards a tree or a building off to one side, and then conducting as sharp of a turn as possible, as close as possible to that tree or building that you've picked. From there, start weaving in between different landmarks. Make a left turn, then a right turn, then a left turn. Kind of like weaving in between cones in a car. From there, find a river or a road surrounded on either side by trees and weave your way over top of it as low and as fast as possible. As you push yourself, you might notice that to make certain turns, you're going to have to reduce your speed on a straightaway prior to conducting the turn. This is okay. It's important, however, to note the dimensions of your helicopter, the position of your pilot within the helicopter, and where the axis of the rotor blades is. This means the center point at which the blades spin around. This is also going to be your rotation axis for your pitch and roll. When it comes to the dimensions of the helicopter, you need to realize that as the pilot, you are sitting in the very front right side of the helicopter. This means that the edge of your main rotor blade to the right side is going to be closer than it is to the left side. Also, it means that you are almost on the complete opposite end as the tail rotor. You've got a lot of bird behind you and not a lot of it in front of you. When pilots crash due to hitting their rotor blades, I most often see it either on the left side of the helicopter or on the rear. When trying to fly as low as possible, map of the earth style, the most common mistake that I see is when a pilot needs to pull up and gain altitude, say if there's a hill, a bridge, tree, or building in front of them that they need to get over, they pull back hard at the last moment, and that often results in a tail strike, which will crash your bird. Always be mindful of this and pull up the nose of your helicopter gently to gain a couple meters of altitude, and then you can pull up hard without risking a tail strike. One trick to making it over the top of an obstacle in front of you while maintaining low altitude is to pitch up and get yourself on a trajectory that will carry you over the top, and once you notice that you are on this trajectory, drop your collective down to 0 momentarily. This will keep you from overshooting it and will start bringing your bird down immediately after cresting the top. Once you notice that you're over the top, bring your collective back up to 100 and continue on your way. All things said and done, you just need to practice and push yourself to get a really good feel for the flight mechanics and how your inputs affect your flight path. When it comes to evasive maneuvers, the first thing you need to consider is what is your threat? Is it an infantryman with a lat or hat kit? Is it a vehicle firing any kind of standard projectile? Or is it a wire-guided rocket from either a stationary emplacement or the top of a vehicle? When it comes to vehicles, well, there's really only one thing you need to know. Get away. There's nothing you can do to neutralize the threat, so your best bet is to fly away from the vehicle. Just remember to fly low, that way you can put things like trees, buildings, or terrain features in between you and the gun of the vehicle. That being said, it's still very important to keep your speed up. The faster you're going, the harder you will be to hit. Making too many sharp turns will reduce your speed and make you a sitting duck for a vehicle if it can still see you. Unfortunately, with squad's flight mechanics, the ducking left and right doesn't really play out to your advantage. In this example, I fly right over the top of an enemy BTR. I make it out alive though because I'm able to continue flying low over the buildings, which block the shot of the BTR once I pass over him.
Stay low, stay low, stay low, stay low.
If your threat is in the form of an infantryman with a lat or hat kit, your best defense is just seeing them first. If you spot them with their rocket out and they're lining up on you, it's best to just change course. And I'll tell you how in just a sec. If your threat is a wire-guided missile, like with the lat or hat kit, you just need to change course. In both of these cases, if the rocket is being fired from your front or rear, you want to try and turn left or right. If the rocket is coming from either side of you, you're going to want to either change elevation or change speed. Whatever you're doing though, do not try and gain elevation during an evasive maneuver. There's this crazy thing called gravity that you will have to fight in this elevation change, and it will be slower than, say, dropping altitude. An obvious exception to this rule, of course, is if you're already too low to drop any more altitude. Generally speaking, if you're getting fired at by a lat or a hat kit, they're going to be firing from a short enough range that an audible indicator isn't going to do you any good. The only chance you have to evade the rocket is if you see them lining up on you. This is different, though, for wire-guided rockets. If one of these systems fires at you from within 1 kilometer, you will typically be able to hear a small pop in the distance of the rocket initiating, and this will come before the sound of the rocket roaring up behind you. If you manage to hear the shot, don't take action just yet, but be ready. The instant you hear that infamous roar of a tow coming towards you, take your evasive action and cross your fingers. Now, I'd like to talk about landing. If you really want to take your piloting skills to the next level, you'll need to master the art of landing. Although safety is always the ultimate goal when landing a helicopter, you're going to need to challenge yourself to improve your speed and accuracy. Speed is incredibly important. When conducting a landing, you obviously have to slow your bird down, and that puts you in a vulnerable position. The longer you're in the air, moving slowly, trying to land, the longer you're in this vulnerable position. So it's paramount that you get your helicopter on the ground as fast as possible. If you take too long, you're an easy target for a hat or wire-guided missile.
Like line after line.
I'm not sure.
I think ATGMs are actually really bad for gameplay.
I think every country in the world agrees with you.
One of the fastest landing techniques is known by many as the J-hook. I typically like to perform J-hooks by hooking to the right. This is because the pilot seat is situated on the right side of the helicopter, therefore giving you a little bit better peripheral vision on your right side, which will come in handy. To perform a J-hook landing, approach your landing zone head-on. When you're about 200 to 300 meters away from your landing zone, you'll want to angle the aircraft about 50 meters to the left of the landing zone. Approximately 150 meters from the landing zone, you are going to reduce your collective to 0, pitch your nose up initially to about 25 degrees, and begin banking to the side. For the majority of the landing during a J-hook, you'll be able to see your landing zone out of the bottom right corner of your screen. Next, you need to pay attention to your forward momentum in your original direction of travel on your approach. Once you no longer have any momentum in this direction, you'll want to level out your roll and use your roll to make any minor adjustments as necessary. You should still have some forward momentum in the direction of your landing zone, which should be roughly perpendicular to original direction of approach. If you're going to fall short of the landing zone or you're coming down too fast, hit that collective hard. If you're afraid of overshooting the landing zone, keep your collective at 0 and pitch the nose back up to get rid of that last little bit of ground speed. And it should go without saying, but you're going to want to adjust your collective as necessary in order to soften the landing. This method uses the pitch and the turn to reduce the aircraft's speed and get on the ground very quickly. As long as you keep both of these elements in mind, you should be able to get this technique down relatively quickly. After all, it is just a game of managing your helicopter's momentum. You can definitely play around with the distances and angles and speeds of all parts of this landing technique. I've had a lot of success cutting the angle even harder, turning even further, and keeping my final angle of approach still almost dead on. Performing a J-hook landing in this manner follows all of the same principles, except you approach more dead on, drop your collective and pitch up higher, turn almost 180 degrees around, and come down right on top of your landing zone. Next, we're going to talk about your landing accuracy. This is your ability as a pilot to land precisely where you want to. The higher your standard of precision, the more locations you will be able to safely land. Whether it's squeezing in between buildings or trees, or landing on a rooftop, the higher your level of accuracy as a pilot, the more places you'll be able to insert friendly infantry squads or drop supplies for troops already on the ground. More often than not, infantry squad leaders that you're transporting are going to want to set a fob inside of a building. This is to protect the radio from being spotted or destroyed. In dense cities, there's often not enough room to land on the street, and in smaller villages, there's often trees between every building. Because of this, your minimum accuracy standard should be to land accurately on a rooftop 100% of the time with confidence, as they are often the only viable landing area near the building. Rooftop landings are no different from any other than that they can sometimes require a little bit more precision, and your peripheral view of the ground might not be quite as helpful due to the difference in height of the ground and the building. Regardless of the landing technique that you're currently practicing, I highly recommend starting in open ground, whether it be a field or the open training areas. However, once you have the general feel of that specific technique, maybe after 5 to 10 attempts, you should immediately switch over and focus on accurate landings. This will give you more time drilling with higher standards of precision and will get you to your ultimate goal that much faster. Alright, so let's say you've mastered your flight controls and perfected your landing techniques. What now? It's time to take a dive into helicopter theory, because after all, you could be the best pilot out there, but if you don't know what to do, you're not going to be very beneficial for your team. The way I see it, there are 4 primary functions of the helicopter and squad. These functions are transportation, supply, recon, and combat. But before I go any further into these functions, I have to point out that they can all be conducted near simultaneously. To help illustrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to have you imagine a scenario. You take off from main with an infantry squad and a load of supplies to set up a new hab on the attack objective. While flying to your landing zone, you spot an enemy helicopter landing near your defense point. You can conduct recon en route to your target by marking the helicopter's landing zone for the rest of your team. You then make it safely to your own landing zone and drop off the friendly infantry squad. Once the squad leaders place the radio, you drop supplies and take back off. You've now completed transportation and supply. After gaining a little bit of altitude, you spot enemy infantry pushing the squad you just dropped off. You then make a couple of circles around the area while your gunner suppresses these infantry and buys time for the friendly infantry squad to finish building the hab. And now you've supported in a combat role. As you begin your flight returning to base, you spot an enemy vehicle approaching from the flank and mark that for your friendlies on the ground. This gives the squad leader time to get his anti-tank assets ready for the incoming vehicle. If I had to put these 4 functions into an order of importance, the top place would be a toss-up between transportation and supply. But I'll start with supply. Unless you have a specific request from an infantry squad leader, your standard supply load should always include 600 build and the rest ammo. The Blackhawk can only carry 1,000 points of total supply, so that's going to be 600 build and 400 ammo. The Russian Hip, however, can carry 1,500 points, so that's going to be 600 build and 900 ammo. The reason for this is that a hab costs 500 points and an ammo box costs 100. Anytime you're building a new hab, you always want to have an ammo box. Carrying 600 build is also convenient because that's enough for a Cornet or tow launcher or a vehicle repair station. With how fast helicopters can conduct supply missions, there's almost no reason for any friendly fob to not have a wire-guided missile and a repair station and plenty of supplies to supply these both. At the beginning of a game, my first mission is almost always to set up a new hab as far into the map as possible. And my second task is bringing another 600 build for a wire-guided rocket, so the infantry on the ground can have some protection from vehicles. Infantry squad leaders might not always have the time to give you specific supply requests, so it's best to use your best judgment and keep the supplies coming. As with supply, helicopters are the fastest means of transportation in the game. I always try and capitalize on this in the beginning of the match. And I always try and bring a friendly infantry squad at least to the midway point of the map. The beginning of the game is the safest time for you to fly because enemy vehicles and infantry haven't had the time to get that far in and get set up yet. To help you with mid-match transportation missions, we're going to talk about PZs, LZs, and your route. PZ stands for pickup zone, and it's where you will meet the friendly infantry on the ground for pickup. And the LZ is just the opposite. It's the landing zone where you're going to drop them off. Between the PZ and the LZ, you have the most control over your PZ. This is because, of course, you have friendly infantry in the area, and the area should be at least remotely secure. It's important that your PZ is selected in an area with cover and concealment from enemy fires. And it's important to remember that the safest location for your pickup zone might be in the opposite direction of the landing zone. So I wish you the best of luck in convincing the infantry squad leader on the ground to run away from his next objective. Next, we're going to talk about your route. At the end of the day, it's mostly up to pilot preference, but I always recommend you fly low and fast and take an indirect route to the landing zone. Never fly over the top of your objective, and try and approach from the side of the landing zone in reference to the objective. That means if your landing zone is to the west of the objective, swing out wide west on your route and approach west to east. This way, the enemy will have less time to prepare for your arrival. When it comes to selecting a landing zone, you're typically going to have to do this just based off of the map. However, if you have any friendly infantry in the area of the next objective, try coordinating with the friendly squad leaders and see if they can go scout something out. If you have good coordination with the other helicopter pilot, you can have them do a couple of passovers of the area and mark a good landing zone for you. Make sure to have them fly higher altitudes so as to not give away your intentions. If you really want to take things to the next level and the other helicopter isn't currently occupied, have the other bird that's not transporting troops fly ahead of you to the objective and do a couple of circles. This will help draw the attention and fires of enemies in the area away from the bird with the troops. Best case scenario is everything goes smoothly, but if a helicopter is to get shot down, I'd rather be an empty one and not the one with supplies and a friendly infantry squad. A huge advantage of helicopters in squad is their amazing ability to conduct recon for the team. From the air, you can see practically anything, whether it's vehicles, HABs, or even sometimes radios. To make the most of your recon abilities in the helicopter, I highly advise you to mess with your keybinds. I've kept left Alt as free look and left Shift as zoom. By the way, yes, you can zoom in when free looking by pressing Shift as the pilot. This was a trick I didn't know about for an embarrassingly long time. You're absolutely going to want to set a keybind for a quick observe mark. This will allow you to place observe marks with one click instead of having to use the standard T menu. I changed my fire selector button to H and set the middle mouse click as my observe mark because this is what works best for me. But find something that works for you. To conduct the most effective recon, you're probably going to have to fly a little higher, and this is typically the only time I fly higher altitudes. Things typically go okay, but if you start taking fire, just get low. Things that I'm typically looking for are enemy attack HABs near our defense points, and enemy defense HABs on objectives that we have no infantry at yet. If I know my team is about to capture an objective, I'll typically fly to the next one to mark enemy spawn points and emplacements for early warning for our troops, and so we can get mortars rocking on these targets before our infantry are even in the area. At all times, I'm usually looking for enemy vehicles as well. This is in part because they are typically the biggest threat to your helicopter, but of course also because they are the most lethal and mobile assets on the ground. Keeping good tabs on all enemy vehicles will allow your infantry and friendly vehicles to take them out that much easier. If the layer you're playing on has late spawning infantry fighting vehicles or main battle tanks, I'll typically fly towards enemy main a few minutes after this spawn timer to figure out where they're heading and track them as they get closer to our troops. It's always a great feeling when you can assist your vehicle crews in getting the first shot on the enemies, or give heads up to your sappers and combat engineers to get mines down on the road in front of them before they were even close. Another very effective application of helicopter recon is spotting targets and giving corrections for your friendly mortar teams. No matter where your mortar teams are firing on the map, you'll be able to fly over there quickly to get eyes on and give corrections for accuracy or corrections if the enemies begin moving. If your team is the one getting hit hard by enemy mortars, it's very easy to fly your helicopter and find the enemy mortar fire point, and you can either wax them with your gunner or give an incredibly accurate mark for friendlies to counter mortar. Similar to acting as a forward observer for your friendly mortar systems, you can also observe the effect on target of command action strikes. This is really helpful, especially when the commander's calling in strikes but doesn't have a UAV available. Speaking of command support, you can also mark locations for these command action strikes for your commander from the helicopter. This is a very useful tactic to employ when the UAV is on cooldown or already in use in another area. You can really help keep your team's offensive momentum up by calling these strikes in on further objectives while your troops on the ground are still en route. Although the UH-60 and the Mi-8 HIP that we have in squad right now aren't attack helicopters, they still have combat application. And I like to break it down into two elements. On one side, you have suppression, and on the other, you have direct engagement. Suppression is effective in both offensive and defensive scenarios, and can usually be conducted from a safer standoff distance than direct engagement, since your accuracy on target isn't as important for suppression. You can suppress an objective that your friendly troops are pushing, and you can also suppress enemy troops that are assaulting one of your defense points, to give your friendly troops a slight leg up on the enemy. As squad's netcode has been improving, direct engagement is becoming more and more effective as the rubber banding for the gunner becomes less and less. Killing any enemy soldier is helpful for your team, but I would advise you to try and take out key targets. For example, enemy mortar gunners, enemy machine gunners, or enemies that are digging down a radio placed outdoors. When it comes to vehicles, just remember that the only types that you can damage are helicopters and logi trucks. However, I don't advise that you engage an enemy helicopter unless it's packed with troops. It takes a lot of rounds to actually take the bird down. If you see a helicopter landing, it's better to save your ammo for when the infantry start dismounting and are open targets. When it comes to logis though, you can easily kill the driver and passengers with your guns or disable it by popping some tires. In the beginning of matches, after dropping off an infantry squad, I always love flying towards the enemy main, finding a logi, and absolutely ruining their day. It's also really fun to completely destroy those responsible for taking the back cap. This tactic can absolutely destroy an enemy team's momentum at the beginning of a match. When it comes to direct engagement flying, I usually like to fly at about 75% collective, no further out than 200 meters from the target. As the pilot, it's your responsibility to provide a stable flying platform for your gunner and know what angles your gunner can hit. In the UH-60 Blackhawk, the M240 Hotel can traverse 33 degrees towards the front of the helicopter and 29 degrees back. This is a pretty small window. In the Mi-8 HIP, the PKP machine gun can traverse 70 degrees to the front, but only 20 degrees to the rear. In the Blackhawk, each gun will have 5 belts of ammunition apiece. In the HIP, each door gun will have 8 boxes of ammo apiece. Good communication with your door gunners will help you be as effective as possible. I advise you to use some sort of standard operating procedure. For example, if the gunner needs you to turn left in order to see his target, have him tell you left. If your gunners are having trouble hitting their targets and you're sure you're flying well, remind them that right-click aims slightly, but holding shift will zoom in and give them a more clear picture of the target. For the door gunners, it's important to remember that your point of impact will not be in line with the sights. It will be in line with the center of your screen. Your point of aim should be the center of your screen. If you're actively engaged in combat from your helicopter and you have 2 door gunners, it's faster to turn around and let the other door gunner engage while one reloads than it is to stay on the same side and wait for a gunner that's out of ammunition to reload. This will also provide time for the gun that just got done firing to cool down and prevent overheating. When it comes to other members of your helicopter squad, I usually only let 2 other players in, because after all, you only have 2 door guns. Always make sure to assign your door gunners fire teams so that they can support in conducting recon and marking targets. When it comes to kit selection, all I care about is that I have 1 medic with me. This way, if anybody gets injured inside of the helicopter, we can land in the nearest safe area and get them healed up to full rather than having to return back to main, and risk them bleeding out on the trip home. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can even conduct a sort of pararescue mission by dropping off your medic to heal down friendlies after enemies have pushed away, while you cover him from the air. The last trick I have for you can help you when landing in tight spots. On the UH-60 Blackhawk, the door gunners can monitor the main rotor as well as the tail rotor to make sure you don't run into anything. To do this, the gunner needs to point the weapon all the way at the ground and then use left alt to free look. Once they do this, they'll be able to see everything around the bird on their side. For the Mi-8 HIP, the door gunners aren't able to do this, but they can still look out of the rear of the aircraft to see your tail. If you made it to the end of the video, I'd just like to say a big thanks. This is everything I could think of for now, but if there's anything else you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. I appreciate your time, and I hope this helped you.